positive, and I do know the power of brand and the power of a memorable logo and everything. And I just felt led to do it, give you
Uh,
some sort of brand that people could recognize pretty quick. Maybe it can grow even
awesome.
further. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Is that what you do for a living then? Or are you in IT?
So by trade, I'm an industrial designer. I
Oh,
actually,
okay.
yeah, I design in 3D CAD space. I design laparoscopic surgical tools.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, the little claim I have is I designed a cauterization device that was eventually used on my wife when she needed to get her gallbladder removed.
Oh, wow.
So she likes to tell everybody that I saved her life.
That's awesome.
But graphic design is near and dear to my heart. I do it as a quote unquote side gig.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
I've done a lot of branding for people,
Yeah,
and I love that stuff.
that's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, I work for a health system also. I work in IT though,
Oh, cool.
on the IT side,
Okay.
networking.
Mhm.
All right. So I don't know if you wanted to share your personal testimony with us.
Yeah, sure. I've shared it a few times in words on
Oh,
Twitter
okay.
before, but yeah, so my testimony comes by way of marriage. A little backstory to my wife and I. We started dating 16 we were 16 years old, and actually today, March 24th, it'll be 22 years since we actually started dating.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, we were
Congrats.
really young. I taught her how to use a register at a grocery store. I trained her, and the rest was history. But
Yeah.
all through high school together. We separated temporarily when I went to college in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We're up in Connecticut, by the way.
Okay.
Um, so I moved to Florida for art college, and at the same time, her mother got involved with. You may have heard of it, the Remnant Fellowship.
No,
It's
I never
there was
heard
a
that.
recent documentary on HBO Max, I think it is. I don't have the app, but
Hmm.
it's the one about Gwen Shamblin, and it's called The Way Down. If you
Okay.
get a chance, I would definitely check it out.
Yeah.
It put a big burden on our young relationship, and she was essentially forced to leave me because I wouldn't follow that church's doctrine.
Wow. What is
She
her doctrine? Just by the way, to
well, the
just
big and
curious.
yeah, the big and small of it is it started when this woman Gwen did I guess like almost like a biblically based diet,
Okay.
and essentially said, overweight people uh worship food over God. So overweight
Okay.
people naturally go to hell.
Yeah.
And I'm not the skinniest guy, but
Yeah. Uh-huh.
there's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
I do know that they lost any favor in the Christian church because they deny the Trinity. They don't
Okay.
believe in the Trinity.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's not surprising that they're a cult.
exactly. It's like that was like red flag number 1 through
Yeah.
10 right there. But so we were separated for a couple of years. I come home. I moved right back home after college. I was just 21 or 22. About a year floated by, and we got back together. We were,
Hmm.
we knew we needed to be back together. I actually, I like to tell her I waited for her. I never dated anyone else. I
Yeah.
lived in South Florida, never tried to date or anything like that, and I waited for
Hmm.
her. She tried to move on and knew she couldn't. So we ended up back together with the notion that if we're getting back together to try this again, it's going to lead to marriage, and it
Yeah.
did.
Awesome.
Um, we got married about 3 years after that. Um, and so now this year we're celebrating 15 years. We've been married since 2008.
Awesome.
Um,
Hey,
but
congratulations.
I appreciate it. Back in 2016, um, it was like around Black Friday time, so November 2016. Um, I, I'll backtrack a little bit. So we had a friend group that they're not the best influence, but
Hmm.
I grew up in a divorced home, and my mother always used to tell me, friends are like the family you get to pick, so hold on to your friends tight, and that made me look to the wayside on a lot of things. A
Yeah.
lot of red flags about my friends. At the time, I was not a walking by faith Christian.
Yeah.
It was one of those, oh yeah, sure, God's real. I'm kind of a nice guy. Everything's fine. That
Yeah.
was
Yep.
really it. So by no means a relationship. Very rarely prayed. Very rarely went to church. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And uh, that friend group, there was no positive influence through them, and I've known them all for since third, fourth grade.
Yeah.
These are the guys that it was all about pornography. It was all about
Yeah.
terrible words, and as soon as one of them got into drinking, they all got into drinking, and
Yeah.
I was never huge on that, so they liked to keep me around because I was the designated driver, or
Yeah.
and like
Hmm.
in my mind, I said to myself, well, if I'm this moral compass of this group, let me stick around. Maybe that's what I'm
Yeah.
supposed to do, and I justified myself. But the problem was the one friend in that group uh, was predominantly influential to that group,
Hmm.
and he was given um, what am I trying to say? Kind of like a stretched expectation on him, where
Yeah.
whatever he did, oh, it's just him being him. That's what
Yeah.
they always used to say, no matter
Yeah.
how heinous it could have been or something. Um, what had happened is the perfect storm happened. I was basically addicted to video games. I would come home from work, do whatever I had to do. My nights ended around 8 p.m. Waving goodnight to my wife while she went to bed. Well, I'd play video games 8 to 11, 12, 1 sometimes, and then go to
Yeah.
work. I thought I earned it. You know, my father left our family when he was 10, so before that he was never around. So I'm like, oh, at least I'm doing better than he did. So
Yeah.
my bar was set low, and I thought I was doing just fine. Um, my wife needed attention. I didn't give it to her.
Yeah.
Uh, so it started out as kind of a cruel joke from that friend to send her like a lewd message or whatever. And she initially said, that's terrible, don't do that. But the attention grabbed her, and I
Hmm.
can't get very mad at her for that.
Yeah.
Um, so that led to an interaction with them, uh, but ultimately led to an app on the phone that you can, I guess, hide conversations.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what it is, but
Yeah.
she started there so she could have a safe place to talk to him. But it led
Hmm.
to meeting someone else who gave her plenty of attention, a
Yeah.
man from very far away,
Yeah.
who decided to come visit, unbeknownst to me. Yeah, my wife said she wanted a staycation, went on a
Yeah.
staycation at a local hotel, and then came home to tell me it wasn't alone.
Yeah.
I was completely blindsided.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, I remember I was sauteing onions on the stove when she told me, and I remember just dropping everything,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what to do.
Hmm.
It started out as anger, and playing the victim and everything like that.
Hmm.
Uh, and that whole night went by, the next day went by, and she took a couple days, and he was there. He flew in to meet her. He was here for a couple days, and she basically contemplated what to do. I'm like, we
Yeah.
could fix this. And it was really hard for her to like believe that, or it was really hard to say, well, I got something ready to go, why don't I just move on? And now at this point we had a 10 and an 8-year old, or excuse me, I'm way off. So we had a 6 and a 4-year old at the time.
Yeah.
Now they're 13 and 10 or whatever. I can't even keep up. But
So my two are 13 and 9.
oh, there you go. Oh, so your house is just as chaotic then.
Yeah. Yep.
So she I'm pleading with her. I'm trying to figure out. I'm thinking my marriage is already over. We've said the divorce
Mm.
word. I didn't know what to do one day when she actually said the divorce. So this was like 2 or 3 days later after it all came out. And I was at work, and we went to get lunch together to talk about things. And she wouldn't eat. And she's like, I think we're getting divorced. And I broke down. I called my boss. I said, I'm not coming back in. She drove off. I didn't know where to go. I went to my father's house.
Yeah.
And my father and I have a pretty terrible relationship.
Yeah.
Up until then, I was very loyal to him. And that might have been one of my downfalls, where I was a complete yes man, mostly to him. And the relationship I had with him let me be a yes man to many, putting my
Yeah.
principles and everything aside to just be whoever I needed to be to make sure people liked me.
Hmm.
I go to my father. I explain to him everything going on. He says, say no more. And he hands me a cell phone. And he had already had his divorce lawyer on the phone, because at that point he'd been through 2 divorces.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, don't worry, this is going to be just fine. We'll make sure she doesn't get anything. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I said, Dad, I said, can I just get a hug or something? Because I'm like bawling my eyes out. I said, I'm losing my wife, and like we have kids, and I couldn't think of anything else. And he's trying to just put me on the phone with the divorce lawyer. I'm like, I don't need that. And I walked away. And he leaves with advice. He goes, don't pick up the phone from her because she's going to convince you to stay. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I was just blown away at that. So like a day or so goes by. Uh, that night, she decided to sleep on the couch. I'm thinking it's all but over. We're not even speaking to each other. And I slept in the bedroom. And this is kind of where God started. So unbeknownst to each other, we couldn't see each other. We're completely different rooms. I remember I just let the TV play and it was watching me. I don't even remember what was on. And I think my wife turned off everything in the living room, even her
Hmm.
phone. And I remember just sitting up, and like I said, I wasn't really on my walk or anything like that. But I used to remember saying to myself every night, God, thank you for another day. That's all I would ever say. And like, that was
Yeah.
my prayer. And I remember sitting up in my bed and like laughing a little bit. I'm like, am I supposed to thank you for this day too? Like, do I thank you for this?
Yeah.
And, but then I just kind of sat there and I'm like, well, I mean, I guess you knew this was happening too. I mean, if you know everything. And I kind of just got quiet and I don't remember really what happened, but unbeknownst to me, just on one wall separated us, she was doing the same thing on the couch. She sat up, and she grew up in a Christian household, went to Christian private school and everything, but was far away from her walk. But apparently she was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
The next morning, I left very early because my grandfather at the time, he's since passed, but he was on his way to surgery for cancer removal.
Oh.
So, I knew I was going to go down to the local hospital to kind of wish him off, into the
Hmm.
surgery. And I get there and I get a text from my wife. She's like, I need you to come home. As soon as, you said goodbye to your grandfather. So he goes in, please come home. I got to talk to you. And I come walking in and she's got a note and like a teddy bear or something. And she said, these are the last things I have from him. I want you to watch me throw these in the garbage. She goes, I'm yours if you'll have me. I can't leave you.
Yeah.
I can't do life without you. And I said, well, what was this? I mean, you said divorce to me yesterday. And she goes, I don't know. I think I prayed, she said. And I was like, I think I did that too. And I mean, that was the very first moment where we were like, okay, so maybe this could be saved.
Hmm.
Um, I went to counseling alone, and even the woman in there was like, oh no, once a cheater, always a cheater.
Yeah.
Or, you're better off. You could find someone else. Oh, don't worry. I've been cheated on and I've cheated on people. You'll be just fine.
Yep.
I'm like, I'm paying you for this advice. And that was my first experience ever with a therapist.
Hmm.
I didn't seek out, I didn't even know Christian therapists existed at the time. Um, excuse me.
Yep.
So uh, we went or I went like twice and I said, well, I'm going to stop going now because I want to fix it with my wife. And she's like, you're setting yourself up to fail. I'm like, I don't think I am. I really don't think I am. At that time I told the friend group, I had since stopped talking to the one friend, but I told the rest of the group, I said, I'm going to stay with her and we're going to work on this. And those friends of at the time, like I said, I've known them since second, third, fourth grade. And this was back in 2016. They're like, you're a doormat.
Yeah.
If she knows you're going to forgive that easy, she's going to do it again. And you're setting yourself up to fail. You're an idiot, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, well, it's what I feel to do. I want to do it. And they went to the point where they made a fake account to try to prove that she was still doing things.
Huh.
Uh,
Wow.
and yeah, it went pretty far.
Yeah.
So at that point, when I said that, I was written off.
Mm.
The other half of this, my former best friend, it's business as usual with them. They still, I'm sure, hang out and everything. I haven't seen them since so at this point, this would have been like March 2017. I hadn't seen them since.
Yeah.
We've had a couple run-ins like at a grocery store or something, and I
Yeah.
get silent treatment. I'm told that I picked a cheater over my loyal friends. And more importantly, when I forgave my wife and the situation, my father wrote me out. It literally,
Wow.
uh, he said, "You made a mistake. You've shown weakness," and he literally wrote me out of his will. Like
Wow.
I'm actually not his will. His mother and his father died, who I'm very close with, my grandparents. I was at the funeral. Now I'm in a traditional Italian family, off the boat Italian family. So
Yeah.
it's like it's all song and dance. It's very like Catholic and everything.
Yeah.
Where
Yep.
the receiving line at the funeral. I'm the first grandchild of I think 6 or 7. I'm supposed to be at the front of the line. There was a seat at the end for me. Everybody coming in,
Wow.
like, oh yeah, what are you doing down here? I'm like, I don't know. He wouldn't even look at me. Doesn't acknowledge his grandchildren. They don't even know him as
Wow.
being related. Yeah. So all that went on, and we got to a stable place a couple months after. I held her by the hands and I said, I forgive you. I said, I'm trying to trust you. I have my own things I got to work on, but I forgive you. Let's just start there.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, my wife was the last to forgive herself. She didn't think she deserved us. She didn't think she deserved forgiveness.
Yeah.
She was very hard on herself. So um, it was a lot to work through to help her realize that forgiveness means we both get to move on, not just
Yeah.
me. Um, uh, we were content with having no friends, and we didn't for a couple months. We started the summer of 2017, assuming we'd have nobody for a very long time.
Yeah.
Um, on a whim, we went to a birthday party. Um, they were just random friends. My wife used to do the nail thing, Jamberry, and
Yeah.
she made a friend there. And they're like, "Oh well, we're having a birthday party a couple towns away. We're turning 30. We'd love if you came." I'm like, "Sure, whatever. We got nothing to do." And we go there, and it was an outdoor party. Like I said, it was for a 30-year-old, so our aged crowd at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting at a picnic bench and talking to one person, and they're talking to my wife and I. It was a couple, and I'm like, "Well, everybody's like having a really nice time here. They're very peaceful, very very chill. Everybody's just kind of enjoying this. I don't see like alcohol pouring. I don't see people screaming or terrible
Yeah.
music. Just relaxing." And I just remember one by one, the couple was like, "Oh yeah, they go to our church. They go to our church. He's a pastor at our church. They go to our church." And I said, I'm sensing a pattern." I said,
Yeah.
and I looked at my wife. I said, "It's about time we get into a church. There's no reason for us to be at this party right now, except
Yeah.
God showing us there's your community. You've
Yeah.
been put here."
Absolutely.
Um, our church has several locations, and their next location was opening a couple months after that party, really close to our house.
Oh.
Um, so I said, "All right, here's the deal. We know it's starting then. You actually know the pastor from your life as a Christian when you were younger. Let's give it a shot." And I had a lot of stigma about going into church growing up.
Mhm.
My father's side of the family really wanted me to be Catholic, do all that
Yeah. Yep.
catechism and all that. My mother's side, every time I went, I had this deep fear of eternity. Like eternity always scared me. I'm like, what is this forever business? Like there can't be anything I
Yeah.
want to do forever. Of course, not knowing the love of Christ, you don't want
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
But we walk into this church. I'm very apprehensive. I got my daughter in my arms. My son's holding on to me. My wife's next to me, and it was loaded because it was their opening day. It was
Yeah.
loaded. And a gentleman looks at me and he goes, "I have your seat waiting for you." I'm like, "You didn't even know I was coming. What do you mean my seat's waiting for me?" And of course, the only seat available was in the front
Right,
row.
right front row.
Yeah,
Yeah.
praise and worship band. I'm like, "Oh, great." But
Yeah.
I sat there, and that sermon happened to be on forgiveness. And I'm like, wow, there's a
That's
lot of
awesome.
correlation. Yeah, there was a lot of correlation with what we went
Yeah.
through. And uh, we hit the ground running. We've been in that church since then. Now we're going on 8 years there.
Yeah.
I do
Awesome.
serve. We were both on the servant team. We took a step back when we knew my daughter needed a little more attention. We couldn't just leave her with kids ministry.
Uh-huh.
She goes through a little bit of anxiety. So for us to go
Yep.
do something, we wanted to be with her. So I've
Yep.
since pulled back. My son, 13 years old, serves in the kids ministry, helps with like
Awesome.
the 5-year-olds. He loves it.
Yeah.
And I still serve breakfast every couple of weeks because I do like to cook a lot.
Yeah. Good.
You might see pictures on my Twitter of
Yeah.
like barbecue and stuff, but I'll make breakfast every couple
That's
of
a
weeks
good
for the
skill.
servant. I love it. I love it. But we're entrenched there. We go to
Awesome.
our pastor's house for parties, and that's our community. I mean, just the other day, I'm looking down the barrel of a possible layoff at our company.
Mhm.
Nobody knows who's safe in anything, and I have friends now who literally call me in the middle of lunch, and they're like, "Did you hear anything?" I said, "Well, nothing yet." He said, "Well, what are you doing right now?" I said, "Oh, I'm just walking, through the halls at work." He goes, "Can you pray?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And he just stopped everything and prayed for me. I never had that in my life.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But so needless to say, our testimony is about forgiveness,
Mhm.
redemption,
Yeah.
salvation. That same year that we said the word divorce, we also got baptized. I was
Yep.
32
See.
years old at the time. We got baptized. We've we haven't stopped doing devotionals like on YouVersion. We do marriage devotionals. We've done it straight for about 4 or 5 years now.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Um, I told you I talked to my wife and I even prayed about the idea of even doing this, and
Yeah.
she doesn't shy away from it. I mean,
Great.
it paints us both in a weird light, and but I said, well, let's not worry about that. Let's worry about the end game of it all. I mean,
Yep.
some of us really like we have this perspective that the worst of things brings out the best when the perspective is on God,
Absolutely.
and that's kind of what we live by. She'll
Yeah.
tell God's put people in her life that went through the same thing. Like one of her
Mhm.
best friends growing up called her and said, I did something terrible. I cheated on my husband. And she goes, well, I'm glad you called me, and
Yeah.
just let her have it. And to this day, we're in complete transparency with each other. And we
Absolutely.
always often say, like, we can't be at a level of trust that we're at now unless we go through what we went through.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, I don't think I can trust my wife without knowing her at her most vulnerable, and I've gotten to see it. And
Yeah.
I know that we could survive the worst a marriage can go through.
Amen.
Outside of a death of a child or something, I can't imagine something worse than infidelity.
Yeah.
And we've seen the other side of it. It cost me old friends who weren't really friends that much, and it cost me my relationship with my father, which wasn't really a relationship.
Yeah.
What it did do is it gave me a community, but more importantly, it gave me a walk.
Amen.
Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
hold true to that. And it's I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't not hurt to talk about it sometimes,
Yeah.
but it also reminds you, I'd rather
Amen.
have that hurt live with me to my dying breath.
Hmm.
Um, Meaning I know I have to lean on God.
Yeah, I could relate to your story a lot because, me and my wife met each other very young. She was
Mhm.
17, I was 20.
Oh
We've
wow.
been together for 25 years now.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. And but we went through a time period also where before we were saved, we
Mhm,
were doing the same thing. We were both, doing our own thing,
mhm,
and we didn't cheat on each other per se, but we were talking to other people, for attention. I was a, like I said, I wasn't a good husband.
mhm,
We had our firstborn son who, he ended up he's on the autism spectrum, but
mhm.
now he's doing good. But at the time, it was kind of a divide between us and everything. And so we were at our worst point also, to where we almost separate also,
Right.
but God brought us back together also. And that's when uh the one day we had a big fight and I left and I ended up in an old motel room, and that's where I became born again. I
Mhm.
just got down on my knees and asked Jesus to forgive me, and
Yeah.
ever since then I've never been the same. And our marriage has never been better, and like you
Mhm.
said, and like so I could relate a lot to your story,
Absolutely.
and that's what happens a lot. Mostly, these stories you have to hit the bottom before
Mhm.
you submit to God. Basically, it happens a lot of
Absolutely.
times, and so I appreciate you, sharing that story because I think there are a lot of people that can relate to it, including myself.
No,
You know,
absolutely. Rock bottom is one of the greatest blessings if you see it in
it
the right light.
it
It
is
really is.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. Like you said, it's not that when you look back at it, it hurts and whatever, but like you said, it's all for the glory of God, and we're everybody's better, because of it now,
Sure.
like you said. So
Mhm.
was there like a moment like where you would, where you would feel like you became born again? Like, was there like a defining moment that you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there was. It was one of those things where the moment happened and I didn't pick up on it when it did, but then I looked
Yeah,
back and I was like, "Oh, there it is." Yeah.
yeah,
Um, you know, right away, like I said, I knew like Jonah and the whale and like
yeah.
Noah.
Oh,
Like that's all I knew in the Bible. But I
yeah.
jumped into the Bible and somebody in passing had said something about, or I think I might have Google searched. I'm like, what does it say about infidelity in the Bible or something?
Hmm.
I ended up reading the whole book of Hosea. Um,
Yeah, there you go.
and
Yeah,
uh and I just remember reading through it and I'm like, man, I felt just like he did. Like
yeah,
um it was kind of a watershed moment where it was like first I realized you're not really the victim. I mean, to a
yeah,
degree, you shouldn't obviously cheat on your spouse, but
yeah,
I made the decision a whole lot easier for her.
yeah,
I looked back and I'm like, well, I come home and play video games 2 nights a week. I go play softball with my buds or flag football with my buds, or
yeah,
I got my career all day. I made it real easy,
yeah.
to the point where like I even um, in the summer I always take Fridays off. I save my PTO and I take every Friday off. You would think
Hmm.
I'd do something with the family. I would go hiking with a friend every Friday while my
Yeah,
wife's at home with the kids yet again. I mean,
yeah,
you look back and it's like I'd probably cheat on me too.
yeah, yeah.
um,
Yep.
and God let me see that for the whole picture. And I think a lot of people stop before that and just play the victim.
Yeah,
My own father did it. He saw nothing wrong with the way he lived, uh, and it cost him his marriage with my mom, and then his next wife.
yeah,
But you know, God showed me my faults in the situation, but He also showed why this had to happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, and when I looked back, I was like, wow, that was it. Yeah. He let
Yeah.
me live out the Bible. There's several biblical stories that like I can relate right to the subject matter. And I think
Amen. Yeah.
we're all King David for a minute. We're all,
Yeah. Yeah.
Hosea. We're all, Job. We
Yeah.
hit all those numbers.
Yeah, and it's like the advice you're getting from the outside world, like
Yeah.
the world, is doesn't honor marriage, or the
No.
sacredness of marriage. I mean, the world wants, they Satan wants the family to be divided. He wants to
Of
keep
course.
us, broken up, and what I mean, and that's
Yeah.
so, we have like you said, you had to learn, we have to look for wisdom in God and not the
Mhm.
world, because the people of the world don't know any better. They're giving you what they think. Like you said, you went to a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
and they're just giving you more worldly nonsense that, you know, it's it's not beneficial for you or your family, and
Yeah. Absolutely.
you know, and, and we were lucky. I actually was lucky to find a Christian
Mm,
therapist. When we went through a tough time, which was really beneficial.
mm,
It does make a difference.
right.
To Because the world does not, you know, hold or honor marriage as sacred,
Mhm.
or the family. You know what I mean? And
It's
not only
true.
did you save your wife and yourself, but think of your children, how more blessed
Absolutely.
they are, because you guys were able to keep it together. And that's what I think about also. And it's just the whole, it's just,
It's
if we
it's
listen to
so
God, He
yeah.
knows best. It's like,
And like I noticed the chain reaction of it all.
yeah,
So we're finally grounded in a church. At the time, my brother-in-law was going through uh, uh, drug issues.
yeah,
Didn't want to touch church or anything like that, but saw us going,
yeah,
heard our story, felt terrible, but then decided to come to church with us.
yeah.
He ended up finding a marriage. He found his wife in our
Wow,
church because
that's awesome.
this was the kid who fell asleep in church on Easter Sunday
Yeah,
to now his eyes are closed because he's praising and worshiping,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the
That's
Lord
the
gave him
Holy
his wife
Spirit.
there. So there was just like this chain reaction. My
Yeah,
daughter, my daughter, bless her soul, 10 years old. She'll go to school and invite people to church all the time. She gets teachers to pray with her and stuff.
that's
I'm like, man,
awesome.
you're evangelizing better than I ever could.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing how you look back and you see how God is working, throughout
absolutely.
your life, and how you ended up at that picnic with
Yeah,
your church, your future church, and
we had
yeah,
no business being there, and
yeah,
and now I couldn't imagine it never happening that way.
yeah. That's, I mean, absolutely. And it's also like you're talking about, you know, our responsibility, as the head of the household or the spiritual leader. you know so many men are just abandoning their positions, you
Yeah,
know to do that, to be the head of the household, to be the spiritual leader, and that's one of the big problems, and that's
yeah,
why we're seeing such. And I was guilty of that myself, and that's,
yeah.
and I'm not point you know I'm pointing the finger at myself too. Like,
Mhm.
I never, I didn't step up and be the man that I should have been. Like, I
Right.
should be a better husband. Like you're telling, I should have been a better father.
Mhm.
And that's part of what we're seeing. That's why we see so many marriages fail. You know,
100%. Yeah.
and it's once we understand that we have a responsibility and a duty,
Mhm.
as the husband and the father. It's not just about going out and having fun, and
Right.
do whatever we want. We got a lot of responsibility now,
Absolutely.
and we got, it's one thing to be, the head of the house, but it's a
Mhm.
big responsibility also. There's a lot, on your shoulders, which,
Yeah.
obviously we lean on God for that, to carry us,
Mhm.
through that stuff. And
No, absolutely.
but that's we talked about that. We usually have weekly chats with me, Fred, and John, and
Mhm.
last week we were talking about the abortion issue from
Mhm.
a man's, like a guy's perspective, because I think
Mhm.
John went to one of these conferences, and that was
Mhm.
the thing. Like majority abortions are because the man totally abandoned their position as the father. Like I think it
Yeah.
was like 70% or something like
Wow.
that of all
Yeah.
abortion was just because father, the father wasn't involved. They didn't care.
Right.
So yeah, it's what we
There's
learn.
repercussions to our decisions, and it goes well beyond
Yeah,
our own life
absolutely.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, is there like a script, like you said? So you talked about your involvement in church. You were
Mhm.
doing what were you doing? Youth ministry type, Sunday school,
Well, I was just on the servant team, so I'd help
servant team.
with any general. Like my son does
Nice.
children's ministry now.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
But like we live near Yale University.
Oh
They have a big
wow.
children's hospital.
Yeah,
I'm an avid Hot Wheels collector. I mean,
yeah,
people come to, I got them always sitting right next to me. But
yeah.
uh, I had an abundance of them, and I felt overwhelmed to start donating them. My son at 13 months had an 8-hour surgery on his kidney.
Wow.
Um, and while we were there, we had to stay in the children's wing and everything. And it's obviously as happy as they can make it there, but it's still a very tough place to be.
Yeah,
But they have a children's toy closet, and I said, "Well, how do you get the toys for this?" And they had told me, they're usually donating and everything. And right then and there, I always knew I wanted to do it because boys and girls alike love the Hot Wheels. They
yeah,
can roll into surgery with them. They're small enough that they can always
yeah,
tinker around with them. So I'm like, well, I have an unnecessary amount of Hot Wheels in my house. I said, let's do something with it. And I donated on my own the first time, but then my pastor jumped right in. We started making slides at work, at church, and
hmm
him and I do that together now. It's gotten pretty big.
wow,
Um,
that's awesome.
so I have a wonderful relationship with a lot of men in that church, and
Yeah,
we'll get lunch
yeah,
often, and do men's groups and men's ministry, and um, I've just had some incredible people put in my life to help
yeah,
direct me,
yeah.
and
That's a big,
it's
big
really cool.
thing.
Likewise, my wife's got lifelong friends because of that church.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
People
awesome.
that she'll cry and pray with at the end of service or something, and
Yeah,
and and I'm on the prayer team too, when needed. Kind
yeah,
of.
that's
So
awesome.
mhm,
That's really cool ministry that you started there, and
mhm.
that's why I like doing these conversations because like that's a ministry that you might not hear about, but that's a
Right.
really cool ministry that you guys started, and
Mm.
it's impacting a lot of people, you
Yeah.
know,
No. Absolutely.
and it's really cool, and you never know, like one of those kids might look back and think about that, you
And
know,
do something with that. Yeah.
matchbox they got, when
Hmm.
they were a kid, and think, and think of these people. This came from the church, and
Maybe I got.
maybe I should
Yeah.
go back to church, or
I love seeing the chain reaction of things when it comes
yeah,
from.
that's what I
I
mean.
really
It's
do.
Yeah, you never know.
We and funny enough, again with the domino effect. One day I was serving at church, and lo and behold, a woman walked in who I had just finished doing a project with at work. I had no idea she was a Christian. And
Yeah,
she goes, Anthony, what are you doing here? I said, this is my church. What are you doing here? She goes, oh, I wanted to try this church.
yeah,
About a week and a half later, we were presented at work with the idea of starting they call them employee resource groups, ERGs.
yeah,
My corporation sponsors them. They get a budget, and it could be for anything. And I always knew they existed. I just never contemplated a Christian one because I don't
yeah,
know how corporate America handles Christianity. There is a Jewish one, there's a Pride one, there's this one, or that one, African descent, or
yeah,
all these. She's like, well, what if we do a Christian one? There's our location for our work. We have a satellite in Colorado, and they actually have a very big Christian branch there.
yeah,
75 members in that group. I said, well, I don't know, New England. I don't know. We could try. Let's see what
yeah,
happens. I don't know what I'm doing with ministry or anything. Lo and behold, at my company now, again, this is a company with a sea of engineers and scientists and all these people. We have 112 people currently who get scripture from the day from us every day
wow,
on the
wow,
team or on the work intranet. We do Bible study every 2 weeks. The opposite 2 weeks, we do a half hour of just anybody bringing prayer.
yeah,
Testimony happens. We've had tears in the middle of a
wow,
lunch break at work.
that's
It's
awesome.
been very encouraging. And
Yeah, that's really cool.
again, none of these things happen if
No,
I don't have my rock bottom.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
God's like, you have no idea what I'm going to do with what
Yeah,
is perceived as your worst day. You have no idea.
yeah, absolutely. And
So
how do you guys meet? Like with Do you guys just go online, or do you go in
Yeah, so
person, or
a lot of people who joined our group are they still work offsite. We're 4 days a week in, but
yeah,
most are offsite and joined us because they live in all of New England and just wanted the closest one to join.
yeah,
So it's mostly on Zoom. We've had some stuff inside, so sometimes we do like ERG fairs. I'll have a table set up with some drinks, explain what we do. We have this like squishy heart that we give out. I'm trying to see if I have one near me.
yeah?
Like a swag, and we love you.
Wow, that's
So people know we exist. They
yeah,
do know we exist, and I've had random people come to my desk. They're like, "You're in charge of that Christian group, right?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Oh, how do you get on that?" And these are people I'd never, you don't want to judge a book by its cover, but I never
yeah,
even knew they
yeah,
knew what the Bible was, and all of a sudden they're praying, and like it blows my mind all the time.
yeah. That's amazing. That's great. Yeah. So if anybody's watching this, that's a great idea to start a Christian group like that.
Yeah,
And
and
people.
no, there's available things out there. Funny enough, I think the Target Corporation either started this or implements it. It's called the Faith at Work series, and I don't know if it's free or if your corporation has to pay for it,
Yeah,
but it's a curriculum. Essentially, the one we just downloaded is a 10-week Bible study, on like the life of Jesus or something like that.
yeah.
But you can get different ones. I don't know if they're a free resource, but a lot of big corporations, they're not going to advertise it, but they do implement it. I know
Wow.
Target does it, Lowe's does it. We have it at ours. I'm sure there's many others, but
Yeah,
again, I would have never known that existed
yeah,
unless we had that interaction at church. So yeah, anybody listening, check your corporation. They might not boldly advertise it, but it might be available to you. They're
yeah.
not going to
That's
deny it.
awesome.
If they do, that's a problem. But
And do you get like a mixture of like denominations, or that
yeah,
you know of?
yeah. So on our little charter, we say that we're non-denominational,
Yeah,
Bible believing Christians, and we've had quote unquote Catholic people
yeah.
join. We've had yeah, a couple different denominations come in. The Bible study, we go between a couple different versions of the Bible, but it's usually a
Mhm.
general discussion. We try
Yeah,
not to box it into anything, but people seem to be enjoying it.
that's awesome.
We've made a really cool little connection with everybody.
Yeah,
um, and yeah, it's nice. It is really nice.
yeah.
There was a situation at work actually. One of our engineers, unfortunately, her family was part of that string of tornadoes that hit Tennessee like 2 or 3 years ago. I
Oh
remember
yeah,
it was very
yeah. I
devastating.
do.
Her brother, sister-in-law, and nephew were crushed in their home.
Oh
It was
wow.
incredibly devastating. She obviously left work. Her immediate team, um, none of which who are believers, got in touch with me and said, "We know that she was, you know, devoutly faithful. Um, we don't know what else to do for her. Do you think we can all just kind of get in a like a meeting room, like a conference room, and just get together?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely." So me and like five of our we call it Surge, Christian Employee Resource Group. The Surge team got in there, and these engineers are just sitting quietly, and one of our Surge group people said, "Would everybody be okay with me praying?" And everyone's like, "Yeah." And we just had a prayer of peace over non-believers and believers alike.
Wow.
And people, they looked, they did the thing where they're,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
look around,
yeah. They're looking around.
trying to see what's happening, see if anybody starts talking in tongues or something like
Yeah.
that. But um but it was a very powerful moment. There was tears from non-believers and believers, and I think those moments, again, that was her rock bottom, and
Yeah.
look what it did to some people. May have found the Lord that day, we don't know, but it could
Absolutely.
have, you know
Yeah. Yeah. It's powerful.
Mhm.
Yeah. This is great to hear. This is good stuff.
Yeah. I'm telling you, the running joke is he had to wait till I was 33 to finally start using my life for him because I was so stubborn. But yeah, 33.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a coincidence either.
That's probably about when I became saved too. Probably
Yeah.
about around 33, I think.
And I didn't know
Yeah.
Jesus. I didn't know he was crucified at 33 years old until I was in the Bible. I was like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
geez, man, you really want me to see this, don't you? You're really driving it home, aren't you?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, no, it's been a very fun ride. It really
Yeah.
has.
That's awesome. It's great to hear. So, what's your favorite Bible verse? Like, what's a
So
verse that
I lean in
hits home with
on
you?
Yeah, I lean in on John 16:33.
Yeah, I love that
Um,
one. That's
that
a good
you
one.
know, I know it's popular and everything like that, but I do lean in on it because I do tend to worry.
Yeah.
Like I said, every day is kind of a gift at work because we were told there's a looming layoff of a good number of people that will
Mhm.
affect our group, but nobody knows who.
Yeah.
So I have to go in kind of blindly,
Yeah.
and every day, I don't know why I do this, but I'm always the first one in. Our work day starts at 8:30 there, but I'll go in at 6:30 because I like to leave by 3 to be home for when the kids get off the bus.
Yeah.
I'll touch the building and I'll pray over and say, Lord, if any of us got to leave, make it peaceful and let them lean on you for this in this, let them know that you're walking through it with them. And we don't know when. And I'll have moments of like, oh, maybe I should start looking for another job. Let me get my resume ready.
Yeah.
Because I've got two kids and I get severance and everything, but I don't have medical for a while, and we go to the doctors a lot, and
Yeah. Yeah.
all these what ifs are coming in, and I'm like, wow, for somebody who talks about John 16:33 a lot, I'm worrying an awful lot,
Yeah.
but you know, um, that posture kind of changes. I'll have this like circle where it's worry for a moment, and then all of a sudden the verse kicks in, and obviously something kicks in, and God uses something. I remember I was really stressing the other day, and I was walking into work, and when it's cold up here in Connecticut, they put signs out saying, "Watch out for the slippery paths of ice."
Yeah.
The sign had a bunch of words, but then boldly says, "The safe path." And I'm like, oh, that's you, God. You're the safe path. It
Yeah.
might not lead inside this building anymore. It might lead me somewhere else, but you're the safe path.
Absolutely.
And I trip up. I worry daily. I really
Hmm.
do. But he reminds me.
Yeah.
He's got a way of reminding me. He's talked through my wife to me. My wife's like, don't worry. We're a one income family with two young kids, and that's not easy, especially in the living costs of Connecticut.
Yeah.
And she's like, don't worry. You're gonna be fine. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my verse. It
That's
really is.
awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, you're doing a lot of great work there, even
I
if,
appreciate it.
even if your time is going to be over there or whatever. I mean, you've already left your mark there with that group
Sure.
and, planting seeds and making
Absolutely.
differences. And, yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's normal. It's natural for us to worry. And,
Mhm.
there's nothing we can do about that. It's just part of life. It's being human.
Yeah.
But we know that God's in control ultimately, and
Mhm.
like you said, He's the safe way. You know.
Yep.
Well, I know we both probably have to get back to work. I think lunch is almost over. But I want to thank
Uh,
you for
yeah, this was a
sharing
lot of
your
fun.
story with me. And this was a
Mhm.
really good, powerful testimony. And is
Thank
there
you.
anything last words you want to like to say before we close out?
Well, no, not necessarily. But I want to thank you for the time, first of all.
Yeah.
And this will definitely not be my last time. I hope to get in with John and Fred. I
Oh
converse with
yeah,
them pretty
absolutely.
often.
Yeah,
I
especially
owe
since
Fred
you're
a
on the East Coast,
yeah, it's a little
it'll be
weird.
a lot easier to because I'm in Pennsylvania too, so
Oh, okay. Yeah.
so and John's in New York, so
Mhm.
because a lot of other people it's harder to get them on because they're in different time zones.
Right.
But
I'm pretty sure I owe Fred a rack of ribs at some point. I do
yeah,
know that. But yeah, even on this silly app, uh, it's just incredible the fellowship you can find.
yeah,
If obviously you're gonna get some weird stuff too, of
yeah.
course. But yeah, I mean, there's brothers and even sisters on this silly app that I wouldn't trade in for anything.
No, I love Twitter.
Yeah,
There's so many great, like you said, brothers and sisters on there, and
absolutely.
yeah.
But yeah, let's do this again soon. And
All right.
thanks for all the threads you always put up and everything. That's always a blast. It's, it's
Yeah,
it, I love that you do it early too, because I'm just starting my work day. I'll see the little notification. I was like, oh yeah, and let's go. And
yeah.
I really like to dive into those.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, brother. Well, have a good weekend, and thanks for once again for sharing your story. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that can relate to your
Absolutely,
testimony. And
absolutely.
like you said, it's all glory to God.
100%. All right. Well, thank you very
All
much,
right.
and we'll be in touch.
Yeah. God bless. I'll see.